Welcome to TK Friday. The title of today's episode is Finding the Best Light. And that's just what we'll do today, utilizing the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It's that time of the week again, TK Friday. I really love TK Fridays and I know a lot of you out there love them too. I thank you for all your comments and questions and your feedback. I really appreciate that. And for all of you that don't yet own the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, you can click on my affiliate link in the description below. It'll take you to Tony Kuiper's website, and then you can purchase it and use my promo code DK15, and you'll receive 15% off anything you purchase on Tony's site. That includes the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, as well as any training videos that he has on that site. I'll also leave a download link for this image. It's a stock image, so you can go ahead and download it and follow along with me. It's a great way of learning how to use the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. The image may look a little different because I swapped out the sky. I think the sky was replaced on this stock image already, but I didn't like it, so I just put a different sky on it from Photoshop. Let's go ahead and find the best light for this image. Now, right off the bat, when I look at this image, I see these deer. They're very dark. And the way I start processing, I look for troubled areas. And to me, the deer need to be lightened up. So that's what I do. And then I'll look for the next thing that needs corrected. But we're looking for the best light. The first thing we're going to do is grab the object selection tool. Just click on it. And I'm going to drag a marquee just around these two deer. And that'll select the deer. And next I'm going to go over to my TK8 CX panel and click S and M. That stands for Select and Mask. That'll bring up Select and Mask, and here is where we can refine the deer. If you're not using the CX panel, you may be using the Combo panel, but it'll have that same S and M button on it. Next, I'm going to grab the Refine Edge Brush tool and start to paint around the deer here, and I'll get inside the grass on the deer, and it should select this out pretty well. So I'll just keep painting in here, and making sure I get all the different areas, but take your time and do it right. Once you're done, make sure you have output to selection selected, click OK, and that sends you back to Photoshop. Now that we're back in Photoshop, we can take a look and see how our selection looks. So come up here and click this icon. We can check the selection. Now I just look it over and you can see there's some areas that it missed. And I'm going to use the dodge and burn tools as well as the brush tools to correct things. I'm going to start out with the burn tool and just burn around these antlers here. And then I'll grab my dodge tool and paint the antlers themselves, and I'll work back and forth between dodge and burn, and you see me getting the different tools. And I'll even grab a black brush here and paint some of these outer edges here. And then, again, I'll go back to the burn tool, dodge tool. I'll get the dodge tool and start to paint on the deer. I sped the video up just to save some time. Once you're satisfied with your mask, it's not a bad idea to save it as a channel. Click the save icon and then give it a name and click OK. That'll save it as a channel. In case you want to use it later, I'll be using mine right away, so I'm clicking this icon here, which loads it as a selection and then hides the selection. I'm going to go ahead and make this image full size or fit the screen. Now that we have the deer selected, you can see the selection indicators. We're going to go ahead and output it to a color grade tool. Click the plus, that opens up your color grade tool and it attaches the layer mask. Click on the midtone icon and we're just going to drag the midtones to the right and lighten up the deer. Isn't that cool? Just like that. And I think we're also going to warm them up. So grab this block and drag it up into the yellow tones and just add some warmth to the deer. And that's going to look nice. And I think we have a great result here. What do you think? That was pretty easy. Now let's take a look at the before and after. Here's the before and the after. Before and after. I'm happy. The next thing I want to do is set ourselves up for success, and that's with some masks. So the first thing I want to do, we have a sky, so let's go ahead and select the sky by clicking this icon, and we'll save that out as a sky selection by clicking right here, and we'll just call this sky, not D, S, K, Y, and click OK, and it'll save it down to our channels. And now we can invert it, and click save, and that'll be the foreground. So we'll call this foreground. And we'll go ahead and save that as a channel by clicking OK. We have deer, sky, and foreground. And now I want to save out these the tree line. So I'm going to use my object selection tool here. I'm going to go ahead and deselect what I have here for now and use my object selection tool and just click outside here. Click right like so, and we're going to go ahead and select that. And now we need to refine it, so we're going to go ahead and click S&M, and we'll go ahead and refine this selection. I'll grab the Refine Edge brush and just refine along these trees, just painting away. I sped this up a little bit so it can shorten this video because this is going to be a long one. You're going to learn a lot, so stay with me to the end. Can you do it? I'd really appreciate it. And I think you'll appreciate it too, because if you do, you will learn a lot. So I'm just going along the bottom edge here. And once we're finally satisfied, we can click OK, and that brings us right back into Photoshop. And then we can save this as a channel. Let's type trees, save it, and now we have that saved as trees. Now I'm going to go ahead and deselect. And the last thing I want to save is the foreground grass. I'm just using the object selection tool, clicking S&M. Edge refine brush and refine the edge of this. Again, I sped the video up a little bit. When we're done, we're going to output it as a selection. Click OK. Now we're back in Photoshop. We're going to save it as a channel. I'm going to call this foreground grass. Click OK. And now I have all my channels made. I'll click this icon to deselect the selection. Now that I saved out a bunch of masks as channels, it's time to do some work. I want to darken this mountain. So let's come up and get rid of this color grading tool. Let's click on My Channels. Let's click on the foreground, and that'll select the foreground. Now I want to subtract. I just want the mountain, so I can come to my mask calculator, click it on, and subtract. And let's X out of here. Let's go back to My Channels. I want to subtract the trees from it. Let's click equals, and now you notice the mountain is selected. Now I also have the foreground selected, but I can do something really easy here, and that is just get my brush tool with black paint. I could subtract out those foreground grasses if I want to, but you know what? It's easier just for me to paint that out like that. And now I have my mountain selected just like that. Now I'm just going to click on this color grading tool, output it to a color grading tool, click on the mid-tone block, and I want to darken up the mountain only. Isn't this cool? It's only going to darken up that mountain. I just want to darken it up a little bit, and let's just warm it up slightly. Just a slight bit of warming on it. So here is the before and here is the after, just like that. Next, I want to darken the sky a little bit, so let's get rid of the color grading tool. Let's come back to My Channels, grab our sky. See how easy this is when you set yourself up for success. Click on the color grading tool, click on the mid-tone block, and let's just darken it up a little bit. Maybe something around there. I might add a slight bit of warmth, just a little tiny bit to the sky. Here's the before and the after. Yeah, I think that looks good. I'm happy with that. Next, what I want to do is just warm up all the foreground area here. I know I darkened the mountain, but I want to bring some balance to everything. So let's X out of this color grading tool, go back to My Channels. Let's click on foreground. There's our foreground. Let's load it to a color grading tool, or output it to a color grading tool. And now let's click on the mid-tone swatch again. I'm just going to slightly darken the foreground, but I will be leaving out the sky. And I mean just slightly. And I might give it a slight warming up. I think right like that. And here is this is going to be subtle. Here's the before and here is the after. It kind of just brings it all together. The next thing I want to do is tackle these brown evergreen trees, which are not evergreen now. I believe they're evergreen trees, but they're brown here, here, and here. I'm going to show you how we're going to fix this. Pay close attention here because this is something new you're going to learn. Now, every image has its own set of problems. And every time I work on new images, we're going to learn new skills here as we come into something we've never had to deal with before. Alrighty, you ready? Here we go. Let's X out of the color grading tool. Let's come up to the color range mask and click this icon. That opens up your color range mask. Now we want to select this brown color in here. So I'm just going to give it a click and click OK. And as you can see, it's selected those trees. Now what I want to do is lighten those trees up. Let's just drag the slider the whole way over. See how they get nice and light? And now what we want to do is we can lighten them up even more by coming to the levels here and just dragging this highlight slider over a little bit. Not too much, but right about there. Now, we want to isolate these green trees around it. So what do you think we can do here? If you're thinking, hey, Dave, can you subtract green? Well, I believe you're on the right track here. So let's come to the mask calculator and let's click minus. And now let's get this color picker tool right here. And let's click on this green tree right here. And click OK. All right, now my other trees got a little darker because there's yellow in these greens, but you can see right here, it's not perfect yet, but watch what we can do here. See this bar of different colors up here? Let's click on green. And we also have these little circles that we can slide and play with here. Now, I've done this when I was working out how I was going to do this video, and these didn't really help me. But what helped was when I clicked on this green here. And when I do, notice how those other trees go black. Now, this tree is selected. It's not easy to see, however, but watch what happens. When you drag this slider to the right the whole way over, it starts to lighten up. Do you see that? And now we can come here and grab this levels adjustment and start to really drag it over. Okay, and what I want to do is really make that light as I can get it. Let's just really drag it over somewhere right around in there. And now let's click equals. And notice what happens. We have these two trees, these brown trees are selected, and this is black. And we can further refine by clicking on levels again, and I can drag this highlight slider, make those a little lighter, and I can even drag the shadows in a little bit and make that tree even darker yet. Maybe even just a little bit more. So these trees are nice and light, and I can even drag this midtones a little bit to the left and lighten it up. And that's all I need to do. Now, what we're going to do is output this to a color grading tool. You know, it's the one I've been using all the time. So let's go ahead and click it. Now, we're not done yet. We're going to go ahead and make these trees turn green. The rest of the image is going to get ugly, but we're going to do a technique. It's an old technique called masking the mask, and it's simple to do. But first, let's make these trees turn green. So let's click on midtones, and let's drag this midtones block way up into the greens. And you see how things are starting to turn green? Now, let's darken those midtones. Okay, somewhere maybe around in there. Now let's grab our highlights. Let's drag it up into the greens. And let's really darken those highlights. Because now we can really get it to match in there, okay? And we'll come back and tweak this again. I'll just play around with this a little bit more just to try to match that green the best I can. Now, again, the rest of the image looks ugly, but we're going to mask the mask, and that is next. To mask the mask, all we need to do is come over to the CX panel or the combo panel, whichever one you're using. This icon right here for putting a layer into a group. You want to go to the left. This is two-part here, white and black. You want to put this in a black group. So click the left side and you'll notice this color grading layer is in a black group hiding everything. So let's go ahead and really zoom into our image so we can see what we're doing here. Now we're working on these brown trees here. So I'm going to get a brush and we can come right here and get a white paint brush at 100% opacity. I have a nice small brush and I'm just going to paint my tree. And just paint that brown tree green. And the mask is taking care of the trees around it. So I could be kind of sloppy here, but I'm just going to take my time and paint down through here. Make sure I get everything in here. And we can always come back and tweak that color grade if we need to a little bit. It doesn't have to be identical to the other trees. It just has to be close. It just has to look kind of realistic. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm trying to stay away from the tree trunks. That's really why I zoomed in here. Okay, so right here and over in here. And let's get this guy up in here. Okay, and we'll just paint him in as well. And some of this area over in here, we can get in here. That's good. And now we have another tree over here. Now, it's not real brown, so I'm going to take my opacity and take it down. Let's try 30% and paint over this with 30%. It's going to apply some of that green on there. That's 30%. Let's go to 50%. Yeah, I think 50% is better. I feel like Bob Ross painting a happy little tree here. And again, I want to stay off my tree trunks. But as Bob Ross would say, it's your world. You can do with it what you want. Did you ever think you had this much power? But you really, really do. Isn't this cool? But just like so. Now let me go ahead and click this icon to go back to fit the screen. But check this out. Here is the before and here is the after. Now remember, we can still come up here and we can tweak. If we feel we're a little too green or whatever, let's click on the midtone and let's make it a little less green. You see that? How we can come back here and readjust. And right there, I think that's believable. Take your time and get it just the way you like it. But here's the before. We used to have ugly brown trees, and now we have green trees. Wasn't that cool? It's amazing the things you can accomplish with the TK8 panel, and to me this is all part of the joy of editing. Next I want to add some highlight to these trees back here, so let's come back. Let's get rid of this color grading tool. Let me close this group here, and then I'm going to come to my channels, and I got my trees because I want to work on the highlights in the trees here. So what I'm going to do is simply get a mask calculator, and I want to do an intersection. And let's X out of here. So I'm going to intersect. I want highlights. So what do I want to do here? I'm going to use the zone mask. I'm going to click on the zone mask right here and click on some of the highlights in the tree, like right here, and click OK. And it's going to pick out those highlights. Now, I could come here and narrow that selection down by dragging this and pulling this in like so. And then I want to lighten everything up because remember, the light areas are going to take the adjustment. And all the light areas are the highlights, right? So I can drag this over, and let me see, how broad do I want that? Maybe somewhere right around there. Now I can also grab this levels adjustment and even make it lighter by pulling this highlights over, making those highlights even lighter, and we can even take the midtones, and we just don't want to like lose texture, okay? That's important. We don't want to lose any texture in there. Right like that. Don't worry about the rest of the image, because watch what happens when I click equal. Isn't that beautiful? If you don't want these highlights and these grasses down here, you can just grab a brush. I don't think they would really matter, but I can just grab a black brush and paint this stuff away if I want to. Again, you have all this flexibility, and that's why Tony has built all these brushes and stuff into here. They're to be used, okay? You know, he really thought this out when he made this, okay? I'm going to leave those guys on over there. Now, we're going to output this to, what do you think? Color grading tool? Yeah, I love this tool. Click it, and now this is highlights. I'm going to start with midtones, though. Let's click on midtones, and let's start to drag this to the right. And watch the tree highlights magically start to light. Can you see that? I'm going to overdo it a little bit. And somebody out there is going to say, man, you really overdid that. Well, yeah, because I want to make sure you see it on the video, okay? I'm going to make them a little more on the green side. Not too green. Maybe somewhere around there. That might be too light. Let me just back it off a little bit. Okay, let's see. Here's a before and here's a after. But I just want to put a little bit of light on those highlights. This is a little bit of finessing here, okay? Just a little bit of highlights on there. Next, I'm going to darken some of the shadows up to add a little contrast here. So let's X out of the color grading tool. Go back to my channels. Let's get our trees again. I'm going to do another calculation. I'm going to intersect this with, I'm going to grab the zone mask here and grab some of these darker tones in here and click OK. And I'm going to narrow that down just a little wee bit, maybe somewhere right around in there. And I'm not even going to touch this lightness slider, or yes I am. I'm going to lighten it up just a little wee bit, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and click equals. And right there I've selected my shadows, put a color grading tool on there. Midtones, I'm going to drag this to the left. And see how I can just darken up those shadows and add contrast. Here is the before, and here's the after. The next thing I want to do is darken some of the lighter areas of the mountain and the lighter areas of the sky. So I need to select the sky and the mountain together. So this is going to be a wild calculation ride. So follow me here. Let's X out of this color grading tool, and let's come up to my channels. We're going to select the foreground, and now we're going to go to the mask calculator, and we're going to minus out the... Let's see, what do we want to minus out here? The trees, and say equal. Okay. And now I want to add the sky. So let's come back to mask calculator. Let's add, go back to my channels. Let's add the sky, click equals. And now let's get a white brush tool. And let's just see this little edge here. Not a big deal. We can, with white paint at 100% opacity, let's just paint all this in here. This bottom area down here is going to be perfect for us. We don't have to worry about it. This area down here, I need to go black. So let's get a black brush and let's paint this all in black. Let's make the brush bigger, make it go really quick, just like so. And now I have the mountain and the sky selected. One more calculation. Let's click on the calculator and let's do an intersection. And this time, let's X out of here. Let us come to the luminosity masks. And let's see, we want to get light areas. So let's try lights 1. Let's try lights 2. It's between lights 1 and lights 2, so it's like lights 1.5. Here's a tip. If you need to be between two luminosity zones, any of these particular zones for that matter, go to the higher value and click on levels. In my case, I want lights 1.5, so I'll click on 1, click on my levels, and on the midtone slider, type in 0.75. And when you do that, you've now achieved lights 1.5. It's just that simple. Now all I need to do, I'm in intersect, right? Just click equal. And now I have my mountain and my sky, and I'm looking at lights 1.5. Now all I need to do is output that to a color grading tool again. And now just click on the midtone block again, and let's just darken those lights down a little bit. Just like that. Not much, just a little wee bit. Here's the before and here's the after. Very controlled through this luminosity mask, hitting just the lights 1.5. And if you click on these double arrows, you can see what that mask looks like. The final thing I want to do is lighten up some of the darker foreground grasses. So let's X out of the color grading tool, come back to my channels. Let's click on the foreground grass. Okay, very important. Now there's deer in the grass that we don't want to affect. So come to the calculator, click on it, and we want to subtract. Let's X here, come back to my channel, subtract out the deer, click equals, and like that we have the deer in the foreground grass. Now we need to intersect that, so let's click the calculator. Let's intersect it. This time I want to get a zone mask, and I want some of these darker grasses up in here. Like right here, click OK. And now we need to finish the calculation, so let's click equals. And now you'll notice we have the dark grass selected without the deer. It's a perfect mask. Click on midtones and let's just lighten up those grasses. See how nice and easy that is? Just to lighten them up a bit. And the other thing I want to do is change the color grade a little bit. And through experimentation, and sometimes it takes time to figure things out. I tried different things, like went into the blues, but I found out when I went up into cyans, it made my grasses a little bit greener. Now, I don't want to go too much there, but maybe somewhere right around in there. Here is the before, and here's the after. But take your time and get it right. That might be too much. Let me just back it off a little bit. Again, here's the before, and here's the after. Now, let's take a look at the overall before and after. Here's the before, and here's the after. Well, there you go, everyone, and congratulations to all those who stuck it out to the end. You learned a lot in this tutorial, and this is something that you may want to go back and watch again in case you forgot something. If you enjoyed this tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that bell notification icon. Then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.